College football is back, thank goodness.
Kent State, can they get their Jack Lambert on against Penn State? We'll find out.
Longest streak of consecutive winning seasons in the Big Ten belongs to Penn State and Wisconsin with 11. Let's get number 12 started, shall we? The Blue-White Tailgate is next.
Okay, guys, we survived 4.5 months since the blue-white game is finally here. You got to at least feel it in the air, right?
It's awesome. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see this Penn State football team kind of come together. You know, we've been talking about all the different changes and new coaches and new position changes, and the time is right. Here we go.
It was a long wait, fellas, but you know what? We got a new offensive coordinator, a new starting quarterback, the same dynamic running back, and the same comfortable chairs.
Yes.
It just feels right to be here with you guys.
All right, well, coming up later on this show, we're going to hear from Paul Haynes, the head football coach at Kent State. We're going to take a trip to the film room, but first we'll go to the update desk and Andrew Kalista.
Thank you, Steve. Blue-White Tailgate update back and at it again. Some notes for Saturday. Joe Putnam out of the broadcast team. Derek Williams in. I must say, Joe is a true professional and will be a loss for listeners. I'm not exactly sure what they were thinking. Fans expect long lines come Saturday. Airport-style wanding going on at Beaver Stadium. Gates open 2 hours before kickoff to accommodate. Some great news for those at home all weekend. A great opening slate in college football this weekend. 9 games between non-conference Power 5 teams. 4 of those games have both opponents ranked. Take a look. Oklahoma and Houston get it started the right way at noon. Then Rutgers out west in Seattle. Whiskey versus LSU at Lambeau. Great experience for those guys. Then the nightcaps and the rest of the weekend. Bama, USC at Jerry's World. Auburn looking to pull the upset out on the Plains. Last time a game kicked this late at Jordan-Hare, South Florida upset the Tigers in 2007. Sunday, ND Texas, and then Ole Miss FSU in Monday Night Football. One great thing about college football is stories like, how did a 285-pound defensive lineman pick the number 41?
I've worked 41 for basically my whole life in every sport. It actually started back in elementary school when my favorite channel on TV was 41, so when they asked what number I wanted to be, I said 41.
What channel was 41? What network was that? Or...
Cartoon Network.
Okay, gotcha.
Health South injury report. Nick Bowers out for the year, according to Coach James Franklin. And the depth chart is finally here. No major surprises. Cabinda locks down the Mike local product. Kevin Givens, the 3 technique on the defensive line. Guys, that is your Blue-White Tailgate update.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate that. It's the 130th season of Penn State football. I've been here for 120. So guys, I mean, there's just that level of excitement we talked about. It's just like you want to get going, and this is an important year.
Yeah, I think it's a really important year in the fact that, you know, this is James Franklin's 3rd year. You know, he's starting to get his own players in here, his own system. He got his own coaches now, and there's certainly a lot of talent. I've been to practice a few times, and they're going to play fast.
You know, you mentioned the number 130 of the season. The most important number may be 85 because they've got all the scholarships back. They've got the depth that they've want, and that includes all the way to the special teams, guys. Coach was talking about that as well, to be able to run out a lot of talent, even on return teams.
Mm-hmm. So for James Franklin, changes in the offense, which also brings some changes in expectations.
Whenever you have a running back like Saquon Barkley, and whenever you kind of have the pieces of the puzzle starting to come together like we do, you know, I do think there's excitement, and I want people to be excited, but I want them to be excited based on what they see in the stadium on Saturday.
No question about that. Let's look at Penn State's history in openers at Beaver Stadium and all the way through. And the numbers, as you can see on the screen, and Trey, do you get so amped up for an opener that you have to channel it? I mean, how did you handle it?
Well, I mean, I didn't handle it very well just because that's what I used to do. There's a long laundry list of why that was. But for most people, it's kind of like, it's almost like a relief that the first game comes because of all the winter conditioning and then the spring and then the training camp. So it's kind of like you just want to go and go after somebody else as opposed to your own teammates.
And that's exactly how Deshaun Hamilton feels about this. Let's go play somebody else.
We're really excited, especially this long off season, especially going through winter workouts and summer workouts and training camp. Guys are really excited to finally go out there and play someone else, play against an opponent, and where the games actually start counting and things like that. And finally getting back in Beaver City was also a great feeling.
And you have a new coordinator, Todd, on offense. You have a new coordinator on defense. There is an air of mystery as to what it looks like against someone else.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Kent State with the opener. Look, this team was predicted 6th in the MAC, not in the entire league, in their division. So you think that the Nittany Lions are looking to feast on this opponent as they're thirsty to get at somebody else. The Flashes may be the team that they're looking for.
And the well-respected Phil Steele, for example, says, hey, look at their defense, though. Their defense is pretty good. You concentrate, I understand, somewhat on defensive football. So, I mean, that can at least keep you in it. But how much pressure is put on a defense, Trey, when you're concerned about your offense? Can you play as aggressively when you feel like you can't let up a big play?
Well, I mean, I think for us, just in my experience at Penn State, we had so many great offensive players, but at times we really struggled. So as a defensive guy, we were always trying to basically pitch shutouts. I mean, the fact is that, they've got 8 returning starters. They're solid across the board, but okay, they're playing Penn State. They're not playing whoever else they play in the MAC. So to me, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
And Penn State and Kent State have played before. The series, of course, going into the next phase here in the 2016 season. They have played 4 times altogether. I've done almost all of them. All right. You can see what the average score is and so forth. There'll be a lot of age jokes over the course of the season when it comes to me. I got it. But look, you want to get into this thing. It's one thing about openers. You don't have a preseason game to see personnel, Todd. So this opener sets a tone so you can really see what you have.
Absolutely. And Coach Franklin mentioned that he wants people to be excited about what they see on Saturday. Well, they're really excited about what they saw in April. It was like a 7-on-7 drill for Trace McSorley to see that kind of accuracy. So that's what they're expecting, is dynamic running from Saquon Barkley, because he only needs, we know, just a little opening to break it out, and they're hoping for a good performance with a lot of accuracy from Trace McSorley.
Yep, and he was able to get that game under his belt against Georgia. That doesn't hurt, even though it was a different offense. He started slowly in that game, but once he got his feet under him, he performed well. Now he is the starter. We get to see all the way through what's going to happen with him. And speaking of Trace McSorley, he will be one of the topics of conversation when we come back with the Blue White Tailgate as we look at offense after this. Well, all those guys are back this year. In fact, maybe the deepest wide receiving group they've had since 2008. 26 seems to be a player.
You think?
But yeah, just an observation.
McFly, hello. Yeah, he's a good player.
All right, the next part, though, is it's important. What Joe Moorhead wants to do, guys, seems to fit the personnel, right? I mean, that's the big part of this. Fitting personnel.
I think it's kind of like, really good coaches adapt to their players and what they have. They've got some really good wideouts. They've got one of the best running backs in the Big Ten. And although they have an unproven quarterback right now, it's like I think that they have the skills and the offense to really put up some big numbers this year.
Well, the best offensive units in all of football, whether it's high school, college, or pro, there's the offensive coordinator or the guy calling the plays and the trigger man are on the same page, and they work together well. And that's the formula that we're going to see with the new OC and Coach Moorhead and with Trace McSorley.
And the trigger man that Todd referred to is Trace McSorley, who won the job in the preseason.
Coach Moorhead really came in with a clean slate. So I don't know how much the bowl game really factored into their decision. Like I said, Tommy and I, we competed hard. All credit to Tommy. You had a great camp. You pushed me and you made the team better. And this team will be better because of how this competition went with us pushing each other.
And the competition between the two, they worked hard against each other all preseason, but in the end, James Franklin, why Trace McSorley?
I thought Tommy had a really, really good camp, really improved you know, it really kind of played out the way we thought it would play out, give him an opportunity to compete for a starting job, give him an opportunity to close the gap, and he did that. So, you know, we got 2 quarterbacks that we have a lot of confidence in, but Trey McSorley has earned the job, and you know, we're excited.
Well, let's face it, Trey, it starts up front. This offensive line, it seems like the offense is tailored to even make them better.
Well, I mean, I think that it's not going to put as much pressure on them. Again, it's been probably the worst unit for Penn State over the last few years. When I hear people say, well, we've got experienced linemen coming back, it's like, well, but if they didn't do it where they should have done it last year, it doesn't mean they're going to be any better this year. So, you know, we'll see.
And as for Saquon Barkley, the numbers eye-popping from last year. Remember, he missed a couple of games last year, but look at the numbers that he put up. He averaged almost 6 yards a carry last year, Todd, and just made some spectacular plays, sometimes on his own.
Well, you mentioned him. He missed a total of what was amounted to about 3.5 games,
right.
And we're fresh off the discussion of the offensive line being one of the worst units and trying to gain experience. And yet this guy still went over 1,000 yards as a freshman. So that's the reason why the expectation is so great. And then you look at the eye-popping highlight runs that the guys had. And Barkley, you know, look, that much space. We saw some of the practice footage even making guys grab at air. Just the moves are tremendous, and the expectations are right along with it.
And James Franklin said, look, if I'm sitting in the Kent State film room right now, he knows exactly what they have to do against the Penn State offense.
I think they're going to go into the game approaching, say, we're going to overload the box, you know, take Saquon Barkley out of it as much as we possibly can, and force a new quarterback to beat us. So we've spent a lot of time kind of working on those types of schemes. You know, you look, there's a lot of different approaches that you could take.
And then you look outside. You've got Hamilton, Blacknall, Irvin Charles, Jawan Johnson, and then Chris Godwin. Godwin put up great numbers, Todd, last year. Again, we talked about the 1,000 that was put up by Barkley. Godwin cleared 1,000, and you can see where he ranks on the charts.
Yeah, 1,000-yard receiver, and he's just tremendous with those jump balls. How many throws from Christian Hackenberg went deep to Godwin down the sideline, 1-on-1, and he came down with it. Sometimes it was 2-on-1, and he would still come down with the football. So he is a clutch receiver. The guy can get it done across the middle and certainly on the deep patterns as well.
And exemplary when it comes to his concentration, absolutely outstanding. And again, you look at everything that they do on this team. We got to get the players to watch here. So let's get to the players to watch. Todd, we'll start with yours.
Haven't mentioned him yet. It's Mike Gesicki. To me, it's the tight end. If you're going to have a quick strike offense and they're going to overload the box, maybe the run option, it's not there. You're going to go with the quick strike. I'm going to go to Mike Gesicki. They really need him. Coach Moorhead likes to use the tight ends in the offense, and we've known his problems in the past. I'm not going to go over him. He needs to catch the ball and get some confidence early.
Actually, one addendum to that. Another area he's going to be important, Todd, so it's be a blocker in this offense. You know, now it's his 3rd year there. It's not just the receiving part, which is the obvious part, the blocking part.
Okay, my players to watch, or it's actually players, is the offensive line. Penn State is not going to win more than 7 games this year if the offensive line does not improve dramatically from last year. They've got some veteran guys coming back. They've got a new offensive line coach. The scheme is going to be a little bit different. You got Saquon Barkley. You got some great wideouts, and it's going to be very interesting to see how they make out.
Now, of course, this segment will end up being the Player of the Week starting next week. Our players to watch, by the way, brought to you by our good friends at the Family Clothesline. Players to watch, I mean, obviously the quarterback, Trey McSorley, is going to be important. He's going to have to steady the ship in this whole thing, but maybe a couple of other guys to subtly look for along the way. One guy would be a guy like Irvin Charles, for example. You want to get receivers that get separation. I think he can do it with his long strides, his speed, but he also can get separation at 6'4", because this game becomes something about where can you create mismatches. And Trey, Todd, I mean, a 6'4" receiver creates a mismatch.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think the strength of the team this year is the depth at wideout. The thing that's going to be interesting to me is, like, they can all go, they can all run, they can all, you know, jump balls, catch the ball, you know, very aggressive. But how are they going to do blocking? I mean, because what's going to happen is Saquon Barkley is going to break through the line of scrimmage, and are those guys going to be able to block downfield? And for me, that's what I'm going to be watching.
Yeah, you mentioned Irvin Charles' size, 6'4", and that's the only concern about McSorley is his size, 6 foot. If you look at the listed sizes, he is the 2nd smallest person on the starting offense. Only Saquon Barkley at 5'11", and you know how you like to fudge your numbers when you're listed at your height. So he's listed at 6 foot. So obviously it's a concern. If you're an opponent, you're going to try and get it McSorley to sack him, but also hit him hard if he runs the ball.
The other part, too, is the offensive line has to create some lanes for him to throw through if he's throwing the ball in between the hash marks, and that puts some pressure on them. Deshaun Hamilton becomes a key guy in this, too. I think it was a great move for them to put him into the slot because I think that is a natural fit for him in the slot. He's now 212, too, so there's a guy that can block to your point. Coming up, we will take a look at several other items, including the film room, as we continue.
Welcome back to the Blue White Tailgate Show. Time to go inside the film room with Coach Jay Paterno. Coach, all this excitement, new offense, going to the spread. This is all new to Penn State fans. But didn't you have the spread HD about maybe 7 years ago?
It's not new necessarily, but it's a new system after the last 2 years. And with our fan base, a lot of complaints about the fact that it wasn't a high-scoring offense and whatever their excuses may be. But the truth of the matter is, it's a new system. We're going to see some new things as compared to the last couple of years. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, one of the things that people have talked about, let's go to the first slide, is the reintroduction of a running quarterback, which is something we've had on and off. And again, you want to adjust your offense to the type of people that you have. Of that, one of the most important things that people do is what they call the zone read. Now, the zone read is going to be one of those things where you're going to block not everybody. You're going to leave somebody unblocked. Now, in this particular diagram, we're going to talk about the defensive end. You can also zone read off an inside guy, whatever you want. But you're going to leave somebody unblocked, and the quarterback's going to make a decision based on how he reacts. And so if the defensive end comes in to take away the running back, the quarterback keeps it and runs it. If the defensive end plays the quarterback, he hands it the tailback, and essentially you've blocked him without having to block him. We'll take a look at how that works on the video. This is from a couple of years against Illinois, and you're going to see the defensive end for Illinois hesitates. We give it to Evan Royster, and up the field he goes for a good-sized gain. And again, it gives you some advantages.
Coach, why have a running quarterback, and especially in a spread offense, there's different types of running quarterbacks. You have Dennis Dixon, speed guy, avoided contact. Then you have a Michael Robinson, Darryl Clark. They're going to lower the shoulder and try to run you over.
Well, the thing about the running quarterback, it puts the numbers back in your favor in the run game. So if you look, for example, here. You force the defense to do one of two things. You're going to bring an extra guy down, in which case you can throw the ball. Here, Illinois in 2008 wanted to play a lot of two safeties high. So when you look at two safeties high and you look at the numbers, Penn State now has 6 guys to block 6. And with the zone read, you don't even have to block the 6 guys. So the numbers work in your favor. Now, when you get to the spread, one of the things you want to look at is how do the wideouts block. For example, your slot receiver's got to block him. Your other receiver's got to block him. Now, when you look at the video, you'll see how the numbers work out for us here. Here, we don't block the defensive end. It's the same play we just saw from the end zone. And now you've got hats on everybody, and the safeties have to come from 12 yards high to make those tackles. Now, the other part about a running quarterback is if you have success running the football, now they're going to come down and play with one safety high and try and make you throw the ball. Now, here is a 1st and 10 against Michigan State in 2005. Michael Robinson, very effective runner. So they're going to bring a blitz off the edge because they were anticipating us running the football. Michael's going to see that. Now, we have a pass called here. Mike sees that, and with a running quarterback, you'll see what happens. We can take a look at the video. It gives you the advantage now. When you come after a running quarterback, if you blitz him and you don't get him, now that quarterback's free and nobody's covering him. You can see what happens here. On a 1st and 10, when Michigan State's playing run, you see that we get a touchdown out of it. The other element of these spread offenses that you're seeing all over the country now is what they call the run-pass option. So they come up to the line of scrimmage with a pass play and a run. So you have wide receivers running routes, offensive linemen blocking the run. Puts a lot of pressure on these linebackers and safeties to recognize whether the ball is thrown or not. On this one, we're going to have, this is a very simple one. We just have a bubble screen here, a bubble route here with the guys releasing, and then we have a draw off it. You'll also see people running downfield routes. Those linebackers are now stuck with potentially being blocked or having to play the pass. You'll see how it works on this one. When Darryl Clark comes off the ball, he fakes the pass. You see all those guys run outside to play the pass. Safeties are lost, and now we go up the middle for a big score.
Now, Coach, there are different types of spread offenses. Texas Tech runs a version of the spread. Passing. Oregon, we know what they've done in the past. You guys, even in the NFL, there are pro types of spread. So what are we looking at for Penn State?
Well, that's going to be a big question because if you look at the history of what they've done at what Joe Moorhead did at Fordham when he was running their offense the last couple of years, at times they were hurry up, They were running their quarterbacks. 2 years ago, they didn't run the quarterbacks as much. Last year, they ran them more. So you got to take a look at some of the things you do. When you look at some of the numbers, you go to your first slide, you want to see what kind of play numbers you're looking at. When you look at Washington State, a lot of plays, up-tempo all the time, but you look 71% pass. You look at Clemson, Oregon, a lot of plays, more balanced, and you look at Ohio State, only 68 plays a game. Let's take a look at what Fordham's done the last 3 years in their spread offense that you're going to see, and you'll see it varies. So if you go back 3 years, you're looking at almost 80 plays a game. 2 years, you're looking at 60. Last year, 67.8. And Joe Moorhead has said it's not important that we run plays quickly, it's that we run the right plays against what we're seeing. And I think, you know, in this game, I think you may see more up-tempo because of the depth issues.
And one of the big things that the coaches are saying is that what Moorhead does that is very good is because of that up-tempo, he has time to change it with almost a full play clock.
No question about it. I think that's going to be the challenge, is to see how quickly they can get some things done. If you take a look at the next slide, we'll talk about another aspect of these offenses, and that's running your quarterback. Now, in this offense, you're going to see quarterbacks running the football. Now, the question is how much. You look at the last 3 years. 3 years ago, 10 carries a game for the quarterbacks at Fordham. 2 years ago, a lot less. Last year, 9.7. So that's a lot of runs for a quarterback, and you're going to McSorley's got to make sure he stays healthy.
And sacks, this offense, they did give up some sacks down at Fordham. Almost not maybe not as big hits as Christian Hackenberg took because of the system, but still some big hits that totaled up.
Well, if you take a look at the last stat, one of the things is we started to research what we may see. You know, I know people, Penn State fans, have been upset by the number of sacks given up the last 3 years. If you look at it, 105 sacks the last 3 years. Fordham's given up 118. So this is going to be one of those things where hopefully you can minimize those things and that there's a big improvement from last year.
That's why you need two quarterbacks. Tommy Stevens has to be ready. Both of us, when we look at Trace McSorley, we see a little bit of Zach Mills. To keep him in the pocket, though, not as big as Zach was back in his day. When we come back, time to break down the Penn State defense.
Decades, defense, the backbone, even when guys wore 35 here. Backbone.
Come on. I mean, when you think of Penn State, is it called quarterback U? Is it called running back U? Wide receiver U? I don't think so. Linebacker U. Penn State's defense is going to have to really carry this team, in my opinion, early on in the season. They can be dominating, although they lost 3 guys from the NFL up front who are not only good players but very good leaders on the team. And it's going to be interesting to see how they react.
They give you a card that says that?
Card carrying out. That's right. Linebacker U, alum.
You know, though, it's part of the fun part of college football is the evolution of your roster, right? And how the experience changes. Last year, everything's about the defensive line and those leaders up front. And now all of a sudden, it's about filling those spots. And so that you talk about the back seven a little bit more. Now we got some more experience in the secondary, and those linebackers, maybe not as deep a core as you want, but a lot of experience in there and a lot of playing time in the middle and on the side. So it's pretty cool, and no matter what, you got a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball, and they should be an aggressive, good unit this year.
And a key guy in that defensive tackle spot will be Parker Cothran, and he now knows with Zettel and Johnson in NFL camps, he knows he has to step up.
I worked harder this year than I probably have in the past. Having everyone look to me when they have questions, trying to be that guy that AJ and Zettel were to me, to them, taking that leadership role.
And you look at the back seven, 6 out of 7 starters back, but Malik Golden was the nickel last year, so you feel like you have all 7 back. And Todd, that makes a big difference.
Absolutely. It gives those guys up on the defensive line a little chance to grow, and maybe that extra half second. We talk about this game and just that little bit of time that you need extra to either get to the quarterback, or last year getting to the quarterback to give the secondary to help. Well, now maybe the secondary can cover the guys another extra half second and give that defensive line time to get to the quarterback.
And for James Franklin, when it comes to the secondary, he wants to see a little extra from them.
We want our guys to take some calculated risks, especially in practice. Start to kind of test yourself and kind of see what plays you feel confident that you can make on a consistent basis. And that's the fine line of balancing those two things. So I think our guys are enjoying it. It's a little bit more aggressive.
They'll have to be, because here's a stat from last year. You know how many interceptions safeties had for Penn State last year? 1. Wow. That was Malik Golden at the end of the Maryland game. So the safeties had 1 pick last year. That's got to change. But I want to get the linebacking play between Jason Kabinda, Naeem Wortman-White, Brandon Bell, then maybe Jay Cooper, Manny Bowen. What are you seeing there, Trey?
Well, I think the first 3 guys, obviously the starters are very solid. Wortman-White, it's just disappointing he was out last year, but I don't think he's really going to miss a step. I think the tradition of linebackers and the guys that they have in place, I'm excited for them. The interesting thing is, can they be healthy? And if they do have to substitute, are they going to have the guys be able to step up?
And that's a key part to this. But, I go back to that secondary deal. I mean, that's something I think a lot of people don't realize, Todd.
Yeah, they have the opportunity to be really, really good. And your secondary is pivotal on 3rd down. You got to get off the field and make them punt. And if you got a secondary that has good closing speed, that has good cover skills, and can tackle, because sometimes the quarterback will have to tuck it under and run, or it'll be 3rd and 7, and you've got to make that tackle to make sure they're short of the 1st down marker. It's going to be a big part of what happens on Saturday.
All right, guys, our family clothesline defensive players to watch. Trey, we'll start with you.
To me, it's very simple. It's going to be Wortman-White. The fact is, he was out last year. He looks healthy. I've been to practice a couple of times, and he looks great.
I'll go with the corners, John Reed and Grant Haley. So John Haley, Grant Reed, however you want to mention it. I want those corners. I'm looking to see what they're going to do on the sides.
Yeah, no question. John Reed, I think, has a chance, maybe not now, but at some point in his career, to be a first-team All-American. Reed can be that good. To me, the players I'm going to be watching for are going to be the defensive tackle spots. It's going to be a key there between Parker Cothran, Kevin Givens, Robert Windsor, Antoine White, Tyrell Chavis. They'll be on a pitch count to keep them fresh, but I think they'll have an opportunity as a collective group to be solid. Coming up, Andrew Kalista talks with the head coach at Kent State, Paul Haynes, as we continue with the Blue White Tailgate after this. We always like to bring in different perspectives. How about the perspective of the opposing team's head coach? Andrew Kalista standing by.
Thank you, Steve. We are pleased to welcome to the Blue White Tailgate Show head coach of Kent State, Paul Haynes. Coach, thanks a lot for joining us.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Coach, one thing that jumps out when you're researching this Kent State team is through the years, tough opponents that you guys schedule. LSU, Alabama, Ohio State, Penn State. What is it like leading up to those games?
It's exciting. I mean, it's exciting, for our kids. And, again, we're a mid-major, of course, and going into those venues and playing those Power 5 schools is fun for our kids.
High school football in Ohio, big deal. Are the kids beginning to take notice of that schedule when you go to talk to them?
I think it's a part that we sit there and talk to. Again, like you said, I mean, it's, football here in this state is a religion, and I think those kids, again, everybody wants to get recruited by a so-called Power 5 school, and then when they don't and they have an opportunity to play against them, I think it's important to them.
Absolutely. Defense, really, really tough last year. That was definitely a turnaround from the previous 2 years. What was the key to that?
Well, I think, again, when you hold a team to negative 33 yards in one game, I think your numbers are going to be, pretty good at the end of the year. And we did that, I think, in week 3. It wasn't the telltale sign of how we played in the league, though. We did not play very, good defense in the league, and we keep telling our guys that because they're hearing all the time on how good a defense that we were, and we, in our standards, we were not very good, so there's a lot to work on. There's a lot of things that we have to improve on and get better at. But there was a lot of good things that we did do. So we got to continue to do those things, and we got to make sure that we improve on the things that we fell off on at the beginning of the year.
Gotcha. I know you've been around great backs from your time at Ohio State. When you look at Saquon Barkley, what do you guys have to do defensively to stop him on Saturday?
Hopefully they'll let us play with 12. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything that you're going to stop him. And any time that we've won in games like this with a dynamic player, and he is dynamic. I mean, he's probably, if not the best back in the country, one of the best backs in the country. So I don't know if it's stopping him. I think you got to make sure that nobody else has a so-called breakout game. because then if it goes to 2 tiers, then you're really in trouble. And they have the talent to do that. I mean, their wideouts are very, very good. Their backup running back is very, very good. So that's the thing that you got to make sure that you do. I mean, they go back to, when we played Vince Young and, teams like that and guys like that. There's no stopping those guys. But you got to make sure that you don't let the floodgates open up with other guys having breakout games too.
Coach, you mentioned the wide receivers at Penn State, so I want to ask you about Mr. Hawley in your secondary. He's a tremendous player.
He is, and his story is awesome. I mean, he was 2 days away from being a walk-on. And again, he was kind of just like me because I had to walk on, to Kent State. But, I had a conversation with the kid. It was probably on Sunday. Signing date was on Wednesday or so, or the week before that, the Sunday before that, had a conversation with him. And I was just like, you're crazy. We got to offer this guy. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. He's always has. But he's a tremendous player. And he can only get better. I mean, and this game is important to him, for sure, to go out there. And, he's a 2-time All-MAC player, and he wants to be a 3-time All-MAC player.
Coach, offensively, late last year you went with a youth movement. Is now the time that this unit comes together?
Yeah, it has to. I mean, I don't know if you can get any worse, than what we were, last year with when you look at statistically and numbers and everything. We were at the bottom at a lot of things, and again, a lot of reasons, for that. But another year in the system, guys get a little older, they get a little bigger, stronger, faster. So hopefully, we'll see some results from that.
Coach, real quick, want to take you back to 2005 when you were with Ohio State. Describe the scene walking out of the locker room to the field.
It was crazy. I mean, it was just uncomfortable, man, because you were in single file line and it was brutal. It was one of those things that you'll never forget. I'll never forget. But it was exciting. It was fun. I think this is the venue that I always, ever since that 2005, it is kind of like my scale on how rowdy the crowd is going to be, or the atmosphere based on that 2005 Penn State game.
Hey, Coach, I know the Penn State fans love to hear it. Thanks a lot for taking the time.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good luck on Saturday. Steve, back to you.
All right, great job, Andrew. Great interview. Some intriguing stuff there to talk about. Let's take a look at Paul Haynes in his career very quickly as to where he's taken the program. And it's been a long road for him to get to Kent State. And, guys, he talked about some things. And one thing, Phil Steele says, hey, look, they got more returning guys than anybody. Yet he says he thinks they're overrated defensively.
Well, okay, they were 3-9 last year, last I checked. Okay, they have 18 There's an old adage that says you can't make chicken salad out of chicken. You know what? They got 18 returning starters. So what?
Well, I'm loving you clean things up.
I mean, I don't like to live by the numbers completely, but when you're in your 4th year and you're still searching for career win number 10, you got some issues. And, your 4th year is really, really telling as a head coach at a program. You've had time to implement what you want to implement. He better have a pretty solid season.
Oh, by the way, they still have to play at Alabama this year.
Yeah.
I mean, they still have that. And the other part that intrigued me was he didn't like his offense last year. They took Colin Reardon and made him a slot receiver. So that just tells me they feel there's nowhere to go but up. Interesting. By the way, the infamous G block is still to come. We'll talk more about Kent State after this. State, they have a lot of people back, 19 out of 22. Now, there's good news. Got everybody back. You went 3-9 last year.
Yep.
That's the bad news. You got everybody back. The hope is you're going to be better across the board, but it goes to the point you made in the previous segment.
Well, I mean, again, it's like you've got all these kids coming back, but they're playing. They're playing at our place opening game, right? 3 games later they're playing at Alabama. The MAC is a very, very good football conference, and I mean, not that he's on the hot seat or anything, but after the first 3 years, 4 years, as Todd you mentioned, I mean, he's got to come up with a good season here.
Well, they don't shy away from top-notch competition.
Right.
You got to respect that, because when you're in the MAC, you got to have something to sell to the recruits. A trip to Happy Valley, a trip to Alabama. I mean, those are nice things to sell. But at some point, you've got to get the recruits in that can win within your own league. And we're not sure that Paul Haynes has been able to bring in those types of players to win within his own league. I mentioned early in the show, they're predicted to be 6th in their own division, not even in the entire league. So somebody out there is doing some talent evaluation, and they don't like what they see on that roster.
But you know what? You get a couple turnovers early, you get some momentum. Now, I mean, that's why you get scared. It gets scary in an opening game. Colin Reardon had been their primary quarterback. George Bolus played a lot of quarterback last year. They made a hard and fast decision. They moved Reardon to the slot. Bolus is the quarterback and is a good runner to go with a good running back in Nick Holly, a pretty good wideout in Antoine Dixon. So it's not that they don't have tools. They have some guys that can play here in this group.
Yeah, you mentioned the 3-quarterback system, though, right? I mean, they're going to play George, but they want 3 guys they want to roll out there. So it could
tailbacks, a lot of tailbacks.
Yeah, I mean, it could be Larry Moe and Curley or Manny Moe and Jack. I mean, it's going to be Penn State's defensive line and the defense coming after them. But you mentioned, I think these kind of games scared Penn State fans a little bit more in the last few years, when you didn't have quite as much depth and quite as much talent. But if they do get a turnover early, or even within the first half, or things start a little slow because you have a new offense and a new quarterback, I think the roster is set up for the Nittany Lions now, where you can just wear them out with the talent that you've got when you get into that second half, if you are struggling at the beginning of the game.
I mean, I think that's the biggest concern you have in this thing, Trey, is that, you know, do you make a pile of mistakes early where now you've got to kick it into another gear to get yourself back and then win? Even though you are the better team on paper, mistakes are the equalizer.
Well, obviously, I mean, you know, as you move up the food chain in athletics, in my opinion, you're going to have a situation where the guys that turn over the ball the most are probably going to lose in all likelihood. But the fact is Penn State going to come into Beaver Stadium and beat Penn State? No. I would actually be surprised if we didn't shut them out, personally.
Now, defensively, pretty good. Terrence Waugh comes back. They play him. They really play him as an up-end outside linebacker. Secondary's pretty good. Holly's brother in the safety's pretty good. Demetrius Monday has 8 career interceptions. He had 6 last year. And for Deshaun Hamilton, he says that secondary does do some things that Penn State has to respect right out of the gate.
Playing basically single high man coverage almost the whole game, or their corners are pressed up on the outside the whole game. So it's really just about matchups. But you know, they're one of the more aggressive groups that we've seen from the past. Just looking at a couple of days of film of them, and then we know that their safeties are very aggressive players as well. They want to come up and play the run, and also they're pretty good in coverage as well. So it'll be a pretty good matchup for us this weekend.
Yeah, Holly's very aggressive at that safety spot. Gets up there, tries to get his nose in there against the running game. But I don't know, you don't want your safety leading you in tackles. That normally is a bad thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is a bad thing. But, you know, the bottom line is, like, we're talking about to have 8 starters back. I mean, the way I think about it is like, okay, how many of those 8 guys would replace the Penn State guys? None of those 8 starters would start for Penn State. And I would argue that probably half of those 8 would only be probably backups or be struggling to be a backup for Penn State. So, I mean, I think the talent pool is so different. And, you know, they've got something to prove, Penn State, this year. So, and I expect them to play well.
You know, to play on Deshaun's point about the secondary, what I'm really interested to see, guys, is the timing involved with our offense, with Trace McSorley and the wideouts, because they want to move quickly. They want to do things quickly, and that means hitting a guy as soon as he breaks, so that you don't need quite as much separation. So I want to really interested to see, if it's an aggressive secondary, what the timing does for Penn State, if they can make those quick hitters first, second down, and keep those chains moving.
Yeah. Trace McSorley is a pretty steady guy for the most part. But remember, in the bowl game, when he got in there, which he didn't expect, you know, it took a couple series to get his feet under him. Then once he did, he steadied and played really well. This is his first ever start at Penn State. This is his first ever start in Beaver Stadium. But he's had time to think about it. Now, everybody reacts differently. I mean, you had time to think about your first start. What was that week like, knowing that it was finally your breakthrough moment?
Well, I mean, for me, it was, you know, I felt like I should have been the starter the year before. And that was kind of like, that was, yeah, shocker about that. But, I mean, I should have started in front of Donnie Graham. I like Donnie Graham, but I should have started in front of him. But I think the thing is, like, once you know that you're the starter and you've been given that position, it's up to you to kind of keep it. You know, again, going to practice and seeing Trace in practice, he was clearly the better player, and I think they're going to be okay with him.
Well, we'll all find out starting at 3:30. Coming up, The good, the bad, the ugly. We'll have you predict the order next. All right, back for the infamous G block. The good, the bad, the ugly, and just for 1 week they'll defer to age and say I get the good. Okay? College football's back. That's a simple good. All right, the bad?
Bad for me.
The bad boy goes.
Here we go. Bad for me. Bad for me is the fact that college football is playing on Labor Day. I think it's ridiculous, and I don't know what's worse, playing on Labor Day or having a potential president have cankles.
Oh, gee.
And I get to follow that with the ugly. I could detail all the off-the-field transgressions for Notre Dame for Trey, but we won't go there. I don't think we have enough time. So I'll go straight to the Pac-12. Predicted once again to miss out on the Final Four for the national championship. They missed it last year. And not many people think a Pac-12 representative will be there in the end with a chance.
Interesting. Now we get to our picks. This is how it's going to work this year on the picks. Let's take a look at the games first that we're going to pick this week. Each one of us is going to take a game, but off the air, we're all going to make picks. And in the end, we're all going to go to John Stroh's for dinner. All right, so let's start with this. You notice I made Stroh Page. You like that?
It sounds like a fancy restaurant, doesn't it?
Oh, it does deep down. But you get Georgia against North Carolina at Chapel Hill.
Tar Heels. I tell you what, they took Clemson down to the wire in the championship game last year. I liked the Tar Heels. They have to replace their quarterback. A lot of teams do. But they got a lot of starters back. They have a lot of talent. I'm going to go with North Carolina over Georgia and Kirby Smart at home.
We resisted having Texas Notre Dame for the Trey pick. We decided to go with Oklahoma Houston.
Okay, well, Notre Dame, Texas, they're playing on Sunday. As you know, I hate Notre Dame, so I hope Texas wins. Oklahoma, Oklahoma Houston is contenders versus pretenders. Okay, Tom Herman has never tackled anyone, hasn't thrown a ball. I think Oklahoma puts a whoop. You know what on them.
All right, so Florida State, Ole Miss, another really good one. That's that Labor Day game. Jay Paterno has that pick.
Well, Steve, Florida State and Ole Miss in Orlando. I'm going with the Seminoles because I like their running game. I like that tailback they got. So that's who I'm going with.
Okay, Jay, so I get USC, Alabama. USC's been for some reason their sanction's been highly rated over this time. They're still in transition. New quarterback. Yeah, Alabama has a new quarterback surrounded by awesome people. Okay? Okay. Awesome people surround their new quarterback at Alabama. And the game is at Alabama. NS, no shot. SC. The pick is Alabama. All right, keys to the game. Let's go through it. Keys to the game goes Trey first.
Again, we've been kind of talking about this through the whole segment. The key to the game, in my opinion, is going to be our offensive line. They're bigger, stronger, faster than they were last year. They were a little bit better than the year before because they were terrible. And for me, it's like if they can win the battle up front and kind of get Barkley on a few runs early, I think it's going to be a long day for Kent State.
For me, when you get into games like these, I always go back to the same thing over and over. You're the prohibitive favorite. Now, I think it does help that it's a new offense, a new defense, so you're locked in. But the key is to stay away from mistakes. Just don't open the door and the window of opportunity that makes them think they have a chance. You get on them early and make them think they don't have a chance and make them really worried about going to Alabama.
Past few seasons, Penn State has been atrocious on third downs. Could not stay on the field. Trace McSorley has been labeled a winner and a gamer, and winners and gamers keep their team on the field and sustain drives. So I'm going to be watching third down conversions very closely.
And something else we didn't touch on, but it's going to be important. I think Penn State has an improved kicking game this year, especially with the punt unit. Now, you have to see it in practical application. In practice, it's been really good, but now you have 11 people consumed with hate trying to go after him. So now, see how that plays out, but I think it has a chance to be a lot better. We can't wait for it to start. It's going to be a 3:30 kickoff at Beaver Stadium. It is the opener. We'll come back next week. We'll break that down and then get ready for that second game, wherever that is, on the Blue White Tailgate. Thanks for joining us.